In the distant reaches of the Zalora galaxy, the quiet hum of space was disturbed by an event that no one could have predicted. Zalora, a star system known for its advanced alien civilizations, was home to a race of beings who had long since mastered technology and war. These beings, known as the Zalurians, were proud of their military strength and feared no one. They had explored countless galaxies, but they had never encountered anything like this. Zalora had been peaceful for centuries. The Zalurians, with their vast knowledge and technological advancements, had established themselves as the most powerful force in the galaxy. Their ships were sleek and fast, their weapons deadly, and their strategies impeccable. To the Zalurians, space was their domain, and nothing could stand in their way. Or so they thought. It was a typical day for the Zalurian fleet. Commander Zorka, a seasoned veteran with scars from countless battles, sat in the control room of the Zalorian flagship, observing the quiet expanse of space. The room was dimly lit, with large holographic displays flashing data and charts in front of her. Her long fingers tapped on the armrest of her chair, the only sound in the room apart from the occasional hum of the ship's engines. She had spent years commanding fleets in this galaxy, and yet there was always something new on the horizon. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. An alert flashed on the central screen, causing Zorka to sit up straight. The ship's sensors had detected an object in the distance, an anomaly that wasn't supposed to be there. It was moving slowly, far beyond the normal range of Zalurian detection. The object was enormous, its shape unlike anything the Zalurians had ever encountered. There was no familiar signature of the usual spacecraft, no energy readings that matched any known species or technology. Zorka's heart skipped a beat. She motioned for her team to bring up the visual feed. On the large holographic screen, the image of the object grew clearer. It was a massive metallic structure, gleaming under the distant light of the nearby stars. The ship was unlike anything the Zalurians had ever seen. A battleship, but so much larger, more advanced, and mysterious. It was a behemoth in the quiet of space, and yet it seemed strangely out of place. "What is that?" Zorka whispered under her breath. The ship was radiating an energy signature unlike anything she had ever encountered. The technology was beyond anything the Zalurians had ever come into contact with, and Zorka's mind raced with questions. Who could have built such a ship? What kind of civilization could possess the power to create something so massive and complex? Her eyes narrowed as she studied the object. It wasn't moving like any typical spacecraft. The object's motion was slow, deliberate, almost cautious. Zorka felt a chill run down her spine. Was this ship a scout, a precursor to an invasion? Or was it simply lost, floating in the void of space? "Commander, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from the object," one of her officers announced. The voice was tense, filled with the uncertainty of the unknown. "Play it," Zorka ordered. The officer typed quickly on his console, and soon, a deep mechanical voice echoed through the control room. The language was unfamiliar, but somehow it sounded almost human. Zorka's eyes widened in disbelief. Could this be the first sign of intelligent life beyond the Zalurians' knowledge? But the message was unclear. The words sounded distorted, unintelligible at first. Zorka ordered her team to analyze the signal. The moments felt like hours. As the transmission finally stabilized, the words became clearer, but they were still cryptic. The voice spoke in an alien language, but then the tone shifted, and there was a momentary pause. "Humanity. We are human. We stand ready." Zorka's mind spun. Human. A race she had never heard of. Never before had the Zalurians encountered any race that could be so bold. The phrase, "we stand ready," echoed in her mind. Were they preparing for a battle? Or were they inviting the Zalurians to make contact? What did it mean? Human. What is this nonsense? One of Zorka's officers muttered, his voice filled with skepticism. But Zorka wasn't so quick to dismiss it. She had heard of myths, Ancient stories passed down through the generations of a distant species that had conquered and explored vast stretches of space. Could this be them? Continue monitoring the transmission, Zorka ordered, her voice firm. She needed answers. The ship on the screen remained stationary, as if waiting for something. Zorka turned to her officers. Prepare the fleet. We need to investigate this ship. Her orders were swift, and soon the Silurian fleet began to move toward the mysterious object. The massive ship loomed larger and larger on the view screen, and Zorka felt a strange sense of unease. The unknown could be dangerous, but the curiosity of discovering something new, something beyond the Silurian understanding, was a feeling that every explorer in the galaxy could relate to. As the Silurian fleet approached, the sense of foreboding deepened. Zorka could see the human battleship in more detail now. It had sharp, angular edges, and its surface seemed to shimmer with an almost unnatural glow. The ship's size was incomprehensible. It was larger than any Silurian warship by a factor of 10. The sheer scale of it was enough to leave anyone awestruck. Yet there was something unsettling about it. The silence, the stillness of it all. This ship was not broadcasting any normal signals. No standard communications were being received, only that cryptic message. As they closed the distance, Zorka's anxiety grew. What kind of technology did this species have? What was their purpose? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash on the control panel. One of the sensors detected a faint, unfamiliar energy reading emanating from the human ship. The readings were fluctuating, as if the ship itself was alive in some way. Zorka turned to her crew. Increase speed. Get closer. We need to understand this. The Silurian fleet moved steadily forward, and soon they were within striking distance. Zorka could now make out individual details of the human battleship's surface. The hull was smooth, metallic, and appeared to be crafted from a material that was far beyond Silurian technology. It reflected the stars in a way that seemed almost unnatural, giving off an eerie glow. Then, without warning, the human ship emitted a deep, resonating hum that shook the Silurian flagship. The energy surged through Zorka's ship, making her feel as if the very core of the vessel had been rattled. Her crew looked at each other, alarmed by the sudden vibration. The hum was not like anything they had experienced before. Zorka held her breath. She knew this was a pivotal moment. She ordered her fleet to maintain their positions and sent out a transmission to the human ship, hoping for a response. This is Commander Zorka of the Silurian fleet. We come in peace. Please respond. The seconds felt like eternity. The silence was deafening, and the only sound in the control room was the faint hum of the engines. Then, the ship on the screen did something entirely unexpected. It moved. Slowly, but unmistakably, the human battleship began to turn, its massive hull shifting to face the Silurian fleet. Zorka's eyes widened. This was it. The moment the Silurians would face the unknown. The human battleship was now directly in their path. Whatever lay ahead, Zorka knew that this encounter would forever change the course of their history. It was no longer just a ship they had found in space. It was a force that had the power to reshape everything. And as the human battleship loomed closer, Zorka couldn't help but wonder, what was humanity truly capable of? The Silurian fleet hovered in space, its ships carefully maintaining a distance from the human battleship, which loomed like a silent titan against the backdrop of the stars. Commander Zorka, ever the calm and calculated leader, stood in the middle of the control room, her eyes locked on the immense craft on the view screen. The tension in the room was palpable. Her crew was just as confused and awestruck as she was. The strange human ship remained eerily silent, almost as if it were waiting for something. What were its intentions? What kind of beings could create such a machine? These questions haunted her mind. The human ship's power was evident. It had to be. No ship, not even a Silurian one, could generate the energy signatures the sensors were picking up. Zorka's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chirp from one of her officers. Commander, we've detected another transmission. Lieutenant Vex, a young but highly skilled officer, reported. "It's coming from the human ship. Put it on the main screen," Zorka ordered, her voice firm, yet betraying a hint of unease. The crew had been trying to decipher the earlier transmission, but it was so cryptic that they could make little sense of it. The screen flickered for a moment before the deep mechanical voice of the human ship filled the control room once again. The transmission was brief but clearer than before. "This is a human vessel. We are explorers. Please acknowledge." Zorka's mind raced. Explorers? This was not what she expected. The message sounded almost peaceful, yet it didn't make sense. An exploration ship with technology that could outclass anything the Silurians had ever seen. Was this truly a peaceful race, or was there something deeper at play? The room was silent as Zorka processed the words. The term explorers implied curiosity, but it also suggested the possibility of future expansion, of a race not satisfied with simply surviving, but one looking to conquer, to spread. Yet the tone of the transmission seemed too calm for a species bent on domination. Could these humans be genuinely peaceful? Were they testing the Silurians? Zorka turned to her second-in-command, a battle-hardened officer named Krell. His face, usually stoic, was tight with concern. "Do you think it's a trap?" Zorka asked him, her voice low. Krell's gaze never left the human battleship on the screen. "I can't be sure. The energy readings we've been receiving are unlike anything we've encountered, and they're too stable to be a threat. At least not yet." Zorka nodded thoughtfully. She had been in enough battles to understand when something felt off, and this felt off. But there was also something compelling about this ship, something that called to her curiosity. If they were truly explorers, then this encounter could shake the future of their civilization, for better or worse. "Prepare to make contact," Zorka ordered, turning back to her crew. "Let's see if we can learn more about these humans." Her orders were clear, and the crew moved quickly to comply. The Silurian fleet edged closer, taking great care to maintain a peaceful stance. They were not here to fight, at least not yet. Zorka wanted to know what the humans wanted, to understand their technology, and perhaps most of all, to find out who they were. The battle-ready ship slowly drifted closer to the massive human battleship. The strange glow that emanated from its surface seemed to intensify as they drew near, casting an eerie light across the hulls of the Silurian ships. It was as though the human ship itself was alive, aware of their presence, waiting for them to make the next move. Zorka's mind raced with possibilities. Could this be a trap? A military tactic meant to lure them in, to weaken their resolve. Or perhaps it was a test, one that would show the humans' true intentions. She couldn't be sure, but she was determined to find out. "Lieutenant Vex," Zorka called out, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Scan the human ship once more. I want a complete analysis of its structure and energy output." Vex worked quickly, typing commands into the holographic console in front of him. The rest of the crew stood still, waiting for the results. Moments later, the data appeared on the screen. "This ship is beyond anything we've ever seen," Vex said, his voice filled with awe. "The materials that make up its hull, nothing like this exists in the galaxy. It's almost as if the ship was built using an entirely different set of physics. The energy readings are stable, but at a scale we can't even begin to understand." Zorka's eyes narrowed. The ship was clearly not of any known origin, and its technology was completely alien. The ship's design was sleek, almost organic in its smoothness, and yet it had the hardened features of a warship. There were no visible weapons, but that didn't mean the ship lacked them. Zorka knew better than to trust appearances. "How far are we from direct contact?" Zorka asked, her voice laced with anticipation. "We're close, Commander," Vex replied. "We've crossed into the range of their communication network. They should be able to receive our signals now." Zorka stood up from her command chair and walked toward the observation window. The human ship filled the view. The silence was almost unbearable. What did the humans want? Why had they appeared here, in Zalora space? The more Zorka thought about it, the more the questions piled up. What if they're lying? Krell suddenly spoke up, his voice low and cautious. What if they're not peaceful at all? They might be using this exploration story to lower our guard. Zorka turned to face her second-in-command, her face hardening. Then we will deal with them accordingly. She had dealt with many threats before, and she wasn't about to let the unknown shake her resolve. She was a leader, and a leader had to make decisions, difficult ones. As the fleet continued to close the gap, Zorka made one last decision. Send a message. Let's not assume hostility just yet, but be prepared. Her command echoed in the control room, and Lieutenant Vex quickly sent the transmission. This is Commander Zorka of the Silurian fleet. We acknowledge your presence and your message. Please, tell us more about yourselves. Zorka leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the human battleship. For the first time in her long career, she felt a sense of uncertainty. This was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The transmission from the human ship was peaceful, but there was a strange intensity about it. Something wasn't right. She could feel it in her bones. Then, without warning, the human ship responded. But this time, the response was different. Instead of a voice, the ship sent a stream of data, a visual map of sorts, directly into the Silurian fleet's communication systems. Zorka's eyes widened as the data appeared on the screen. The map depicted a vast network of planets, star systems, and galaxies, all interconnected in a way that was almost mind-boggling. At the center of this map was a glowing sphere, a symbol of power, perhaps. The data was precise, well-organized, and incredibly detailed. The Silurians had never seen anything like it before. Their reach is far greater than we thought, Zorka muttered under her breath. These humans are not just explorers. They're part of something much bigger. The revelation sent shockwaves through her crew. If the humans had access to such a vast network, it meant they were not just a small, isolated species. They were part of a larger force, one that could potentially rival the Silurian Empire itself. The realization hit Zorka like a ton of bricks. The mystery of the human battleship was far deeper than she had ever imagined. As the map continued to fill the screen, Zorka felt a surge of uncertainty. Were the humans truly peaceful explorers, or was this just the beginning of something much more dangerous? The answer, she realized, lay not in their technology, but in their intentions. And to understand those, she would have to make contact on a much deeper level. With a heavy heart, Zorka turned to her officers. Prepare for full communication. We need to know everything about them. It's the only way forward. The mystery of the human battleship was just beginning, and Zorka knew that the answers could change everything, both for the Silurians and the galaxy at large. Commander Zorka stood silently at the edge of the command deck, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that shimmered before her. The mysterious human battleship still floated silently in the void, like a sleeping giant among the stars. Its sheer size was unsettling, but it was more than just the mass. It was the energy humming beneath its skin, the unreadable technology, and the sense of power that felt almost alive. The map sent by the humans was still hovering on one of the side screens, a glowing web of connected systems, galaxies, and planets. If it was real, if even half of it was true, then the Silurians were no longer the only galactic superpower. They had always believed they were unmatched in technology and war. Now, for the first time in centuries, that belief was shaking. Any response to our last message? Zorka asked, her voice calm but alert. Lieutenant Vex shook his head. Still nothing, Commander. The ship hasn't moved. No new transmissions. It's just watching us. Watching. The thought sent a chill through Zorka's spine. She had fought in over 50 campaigns, crushed rebellions, and stood at the helm of one of the greatest military powers in existence. And yet, she had never felt this level of uncertainty. This wasn't a typical enemy. It wasn't even a threat, yet, but it was definitely not just an exploration ship either. Then it happened. Without any warning, the human battleship lit up. Not in a violent way, not with weapons, but with radiant light surging along its hull. Glowing lines raced across its metallic body, like veins beneath a skin of steel. A massive circular device at the center of the ship's structure began to spin slowly, releasing low, resonant pulses that echoed across space. "Commander," Vex called out quickly, "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations. It's powering up. Something." Zorka's heart skipped a beat. She immediately gave the order. "Shields up. All ships, hold formation. Do not fire unless I say so." The crew scrambled into action. The fleet braced for an attack. But instead of unleashing firepower, the human ship activated what appeared to be a holographic projection. A dome of light that expanded outward, encompassing both the human ship and part of the Silurian fleet. Inside this field, the view of the universe shimmered, distorted like ripples on water. A new transmission came through. This time, it wasn't just a voice or a map. It was a vision. The command deck fell into complete silence as the image of an enormous human city appeared in the center of the room, projected in perfect detail. It was like they were standing in it, in a bustling, powerful, and stunning metropolis set on an alien world. Towering skyscrapers reached the skies, starships flew between buildings, and massive structures pulsed with energy. It was a show of progress, intelligence, and might. Then the scene changed. The city disappeared, and a battlefield took its place. Alien ships, unfamiliar even to Zorka, were attacking the human outpost. The Silurian crew watched as a group of human warships appeared from hyperspace. These ships were sleeker, faster, and more powerful than anything they'd ever seen. Within moments, the human fleet destroyed the enemy with terrifying precision. Plasma beams cut through battleships like paper. Shields deflected incoming missiles without a scratch. Ground soldiers, covered in mechanized armor, fought like a single unstoppable force. Zorka clenched her fists as she watched the humans fight. Their tactics were flawless. Their tech was far more advanced than she had feared. But what stood out most was not just their power, it was their unity. These humans were organized, fast, and completely unshaken by fear. "This is their message," Krell said quietly, standing beside her. "They're showing us what they're capable of. This isn't a threat. It's a warning." Zorka nodded slowly. "They want us to understand without firing a shot." The projection faded. The dome of energy around them vanished. The human ship returned to silence. For a moment, nobody spoke. The crew of the Silurian flagship stood stunned, still trying to process what they had just seen. It wasn't just the firepower that had shaken them. It was the scale of what humanity had built. The humans had not just fought back against a threat. They had dominated it. And the message was clear. This is who we are. This is what we can do. "What now, Commander?" Vex asked in a hushed voice. Zorka turned back to the view screen. The human battleship still floated there, unmoving, watching. She could feel it in her gut. They were being tested. And maybe being offered something more. "We've seen their strength," she said slowly. "But we haven't seen their purpose. Not yet. We need to understand why they're here." She stepped forward and issued new orders. Open communication again. This time, not as soldiers, as explorers. Her voice echoed in the command room. The crew exchanged glances. For years, they had seen other species as inferior, always beneath the Silurian Empire. But today, they had seen something more powerful than pride. As the transmission was sent, Zorka stood in silence. Her thoughts ran wild. Could this be the beginning of something bigger? A war? A partnership? Were the humans seeking peace or preparing to conquer? The screen lit up again. This time, it was not a vision or a voice. It was a human. An actual face. A man, mid-age, wearing a black armored suit with glowing blue lines, appeared. His expression was calm, controlled, but there was no mistaking the strength behind his eyes. "I am Commander Elias Kane of the Terran Union," he said in fluent galactic standard. "We come not to conquer, but to explore. We seek knowledge and peace, but we are not weak." He paused. "Your ship showed discipline, restraint. That is why we allowed this contact. Let us speak, not as enemies, but as leaders." The screen went black. Zorka stood motionless. Everything had changed in that moment. For years, the Silurians had believed they were the most powerful civilization in the stars. But the truth had been revealed, not with war, but with presence. The humans had shown their strength with precision, with unity, and with purpose. And in that moment, Zorka knew that the galaxy had just shifted. This wasn't just a meeting. It was the first glimpse of humanity's true might. The silence in the command deck was deafening. For the first time in years, Zorka felt a sense of uncertainty wash over her. The human commander, Elias Kane, had ended the transmission with a simple, yet profound statement. "We come not to conquer, but to explore. We seek knowledge and peace, but we are not weak." The message lingered in her mind, each word echoing in the silent room, as though the full weight of the situation had yet to hit her. Zorka turned to her officers, each one still processing what had just happened. The projection of the human city, their military might, the peaceful transmission, they were all part of the same message. Humans were not to be underestimated. "We need to analyze this message," Zorka said, breaking the silence, her voice calm but resolute. "Find out more about these humans, their history, their technology. We are on the verge of something far greater than we've ever anticipated." Her second-in-command, Krell, stepped forward. "Commander, I believe we've seen enough. They've shown us their might. They've proven they are capable of wiping us out with ease, but instead, they've offered peace. Why? What do they want?" Zorka's eyes darkened. "That's what we need to figure out. They've shown us power, but not their true motivations. I'll not make the mistake of assuming they are merely peaceful explorers. They have far too much strength to be so simple. There's something they're not telling us." The crew worked quickly, analyzing every piece of data they had gathered. The map the humans had shown them, the projections, the technology, it was all overwhelming. Each discovery only deepened the mystery of the human species. These beings, who had been so quiet in the galaxy, were not just another civilization. They were something entirely different. Zorka paced the room, her thoughts swirling. The humans had shown them power, but why the offer of peace? What were they truly after? Hours passed in near silence, the crew working tirelessly to gather more information. Finally, Lieutenant Vex, the communications officer, turned to Zorka, his face pale. "Commander, I believe I have found something." Zorka approached him quickly, her curiosity piqued. Vex pulled up a new set of data on the main screen. It was a historical archive of sorts, a timeline of humanity's rise through the galaxy. There were wars, victories, and oddly enough, a strange pattern emerging. Humanity's growth was not driven by conquest alone, it was driven by adaptation. "They don't just conquer," Vex said quietly. "They assimilate. They find ways to grow stronger, to learn from every species they encounter, and they take what works from each one. It's as if they've mastered evolution itself." Zorka's brow furrowed. "Adaptation. Assimilation." "Yes, Commander," Vex replied, his voice filled with awe. "In every war they've fought, they've never been the ones to start it. They fight to protect what they have, to defend their people. But once the war is over, they don't destroy. They learn, they build, and they grow stronger." Zorka's eyes widened as the realization hit her. These humans, they were not just conquerors. They were something far more dangerous. They were evolving faster than anyone had anticipated. Their ability to adapt, to absorb, and to become stronger with each conflict made them a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. "This changes everything," Zorka muttered under her breath. Before she could process this new information, a sudden alert echoed throughout the command deck. It was a communication from the Human Battleship. "Put it on the screen," Zorka ordered, her heart racing. The screen flickered, and once again, the calm face of Commander Elias Kane appeared. This time, his expression was not one of neutrality, it was one of purpose. "Commander Zorka," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We have watched you. Observe your fleet, your strategies. You are strong, but we are not here to challenge you. We have no desire to see your destruction. But you must understand something. We cannot be the only ones in the galaxy. There are other powers out there, forces that are darker, more dangerous than anything either of us can imagine. We have spent centuries learning, adapting, and preparing. Our goal is simple, to ensure that we, and all of the species we encounter, survive." Zorka stood frozen, her mind racing to keep up with the sudden shift in the conversation. "What do you mean? What other forces?" Kane's eyes hardened. "There are enemies beyond this galaxy, ones that seek to destroy everything in their path. And they are coming. We cannot fight them alone." The words struck Zorka like a thunderclap. "You're telling me we're not alone. There are other forces out there, and you need our help." "Yes," Kane replied. "We have been watching, studying. You are strong, capable, and your fleet has the potential to be an invaluable ally. But we cannot face this threat alone. We need you to join us. Together, we can stand against what is coming." Zorka's heart pounded in her chest. The realization had hit her with the force of a starship colliding with the sigh of a planet. The humans had known something they had not. There were greater dangers lurking in the galaxy. And these dangers were coming for them all. "Why didn't you tell us this sooner?" Zorka demanded, her voice sharp. "We needed you to understand our strength." Kane replied, his gaze unwavering. "We needed to show you that we are not a threat. Not to you, not to anyone, unless we must be. But we are prepared. And now we ask for your help." Zorka stood there, speechless, as the full weight of the situation hit her. The humans were not just powerful, they were prepared for something far more dangerous than anyone had realized. These beings, who had once seemed like mere explorers, were the guardians of something much bigger. They had faced the darkness before and survived. And now they were asking for the Silurians' help. Krell spoke, his voice filled with skepticism. "How do we know we can trust them? How do we know they aren't just manipulating us?" Kane's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "We don't expect trust right away. But you must know this. We have no other choice. If we are to survive what's coming, we must join forces. It's not about trust. It's about survival." Zorka's mind raced as she thought of the ramifications. She had always prided herself on the strength of the Silurians. But now, confronted with the reality of these mysterious human allies, and their warning of an even greater threat, Zorka realized that their world was on the edge of something much bigger than a simple battle for power. "Give us time to consider," Zorka said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in her mind. "We need to discuss this with our leaders. We will contact you soon." Kane nodded, his expression unreadable. "I will await your decision. The clock is ticking." The screen went dark, and Zorka felt the weight of the universe pressing down on her shoulders. Krell turned to her, his expression filled with concern. "Commander, what are we going to do?" Zorka's gaze remained fixed on the screen, her thoughts a blur. "We need to prepare for the worst. This other force they spoke of, it's real. And it's coming. We can't face it alone. Not anymore." The room fell silent as Zorka's words sank in. For the first time, the Silurians were faced with the realization that they were not the supreme power in the galaxy. There were forces out there beyond their understanding, and the humans, the very same species they had initially dismissed as mere explorers, were the only ones who stood between them and annihilation. Zorka turned to face her crew, her eyes hardening with resolve. We make contact with the humans. We join them, or we face our extinction. This is no longer a decision we can delay. As the crew began to prepare for the next step, Zorka stood at the helm of her fleet, staring out into the stars. The universe was changing. And now, for the first time in her life, Zorka understood what it meant to face the unknown. Not with fear, but with determination. Humanity had shown them their might. And now, Zorka knew it was time to join them in the fight for survival.